Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all this beautiful autumn morning here in Canberra. My name is Peter Jennings. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Executive Director of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. And welcome to you all. It's very exciting to start a cyber dialogue with the Spain-Australia Council Foundation, and I'm very honoured to host such a senior and distinguished team from Spain, including Mr. Ignacio Ybañez, Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs. Welcome, sir. It's great to have you. Mr. Ricardo Moy, Ambassador at Large for Cybersecurity. Thank you very much, Ambassador Manuel, for your hosting of the reception last night, and also for making it possible to have this gathering. And I'd also like to acknowledge José Manuel Revuelta of the Spanish-Australia Council Foundation for working with ASPI to produce this dialogue. Thank you very much, gentlemen, all. Thanks also to our Australian colleagues for attending. I hope we're going to be able to transact some useful business today, reflecting the fact that cybersecurity is a pressing reality for both our countries. And my view is we can only benefit from an exchange of ideas about how to address a challenge which has no conventional boundaries and which can do serious damage to our economic infrastructure and security interests. There is obviously a need for Australia to think in global terms about cyber cooperation. Even as we look out on very different strategic geographies, we face common risks here, and we may be able to generate opportunities for increasing our cooperation over cyber matters. Our bilateral trade and investment relationship between Australia and Spain is modest, but I think that only means that we're positioned to identify opportunities for closer engagement. And in saying that, I would also like to acknowledge our Navantia colleagues, our neighbours in this building, who certainly are bucking the trend in terms of doing good business opportunities here in Australia. Now, I would like to briefly explain that the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, or ASPI as we call it, is an organisation which is designed to be close to the policymakers, but independent from government, and with a charter which asks us to provide a separate line of advice on defence and strategic policy to government. In fact, that makes us quite an unusual organisation, because we were specifically created by the then Prime Minister, John Howard, in the year 2000, saying that what they wanted was contestability of policy advice around defence and national security. So that puts us in an unusual and a privileged position, because we get to see the making of policy very close up, but we still have the luxury of being able to suggest alternate policy formulations and ideas to government. And you'll see that we've worked very closely with government on a number of cyber initiatives, including the recently released cyber white paper, which my colleague Tobias Feakin was a member of the advisory panel to government in the production of that report. We will also, at the government's request, be participating with the Centre for International Strategic Studies in the United States in, I think, November, Toby, isn't it, to start the first bilateral cyber dialogue with the United States, involving think tanks as well as government. And we've been very closely involved with the Department of Foreign Affairs in a range of cyber initiatives, not simply in Southeast Asia, but beyond, in terms of international discussion around cyber issues. Many of you will have picked up, I hope, or you must pick up before you go, a copy of our Cyber Maturity Index, which is a rating of the national capabilities of the cyber performance of primarily Asia-Pacific countries. We're now into the second edition. I'm sure the third edition is well under preparation at the moment. It's become something of a go-to manual for looking at assessments of how Asia-Pacific countries are performing in the cyber area, and a rather close eye is paid to whether those performance ratings go up and down over the course of the year. So ASPI is fairly heavily invested in thinking around the challenges of international cyber diplomacy and cyber policy. Now, I'm looking forward to a day of candid and open dialogue, and one where I hope which will position us for new thinking based on shared lessons around cybersecurity, and to position us for closer cooperation. Now, this is an open session. You can see it's being filmed. We will at ASPI be writing about this particular session and the fact of the meeting on our blog site. But after we move to the substantive part of the day from 9:30, this is going to be a closed door session, no media reporting, and I think we'll apply the usual Chatham House rules, which means to say that it's possible for you to talk about the discussions that you've had here, but not to attribute specific comments to individuals. So once again, I welcome you all, and I look forward to a very interesting day. And I would now like to hand over for some opening comments to José Manuel Revuelta, President of the Spain-Australia Council Foundation. Please come to the podium and we will move on from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Mr. Ignacio Ybañez, Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs of Spain. Mr. Richard Sadleir, First Assistant Secretary, International Security Division at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Australia. Mr. Manuel Cacho, Ambassador of Spain. Mr. Peter Jennings, Executive Director of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be here in the opening of this seminar on cybersecurity, organized by the Australian Strategic Policy Institute and the Spain-Australia Council Foundation, with the support of the Spanish Embassy to Australia. I wish to spread my gratitude to all of those that have made this meeting possible. Let me also thank the Spanish Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs for his continued support to the Spain-Australia Council Foundation. We are very honored and grateful for his presence here today with us. In spite of the geographical distance between Spain and Australia, our two countries are becoming progressively closer, thanks to an increasing fluid bilateral relationship based on common values, strategy, and interests in globalized world. Spain and Australia are friends and allies and have the firm intention to tighten their bonds in a complex world, where the sharing of values and principles is much more important than geographical position of each other. The bilateral relations between Spain and Australia are excellent. Now, our challenge is to keep the momentum of this rich bilateral relationship and to strive to open new chapters that allow our countrymen to work even closer in the near future in Australia, in Spain, or in any other corner of our planet. This was one of the reasons that led to the creation of the Spain-Australia Council Foundation, which I am honored to chair. This foundation is a non-profit private institution created in 2010 and promoted and supported by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of Spain. It is part of a network of council foundations that are the greatest exponent of public-private partnership between the Spanish government and the civil society. Our trustees come from the administration and from the private sector and include some of the main Spanish companies present in Australia. The foundation is a public diplomacy tool that promotes initiative to increase mutual understanding and cooperation between the Australian and the Spanish civil societies. It adds its effort to the global action carried out by the administration and by other private players in order to push in the right direction and to multiply the bridges and the bonds between both countries. We are convinced that all these activities will lead to win-win scenario for all of us, since the more we know each other, the more opportunities we will have to multiply our bilateral relationship. On this occasion, we have chosen the cybersecurity sector, where both country and societies share similar threats and risks. In a world with 40% of its population online, citizens, companies, or nations are equally suffering an increasing number of cyber attacks from different parts of the world. That is why we thought it may be a good idea if Spanish and Australian experts coming from the public administration and from the private sector would meet in order to exchange their experience and to know more about the way cybersecurity is being tackled in each of our countries. Since cyber attacks do not respect border, national answer, even being necessary and not enough, an international cooperation in this field among like-minded society seemed not only convenient, but even essential. In 2015, Spain was the third country in the world concerning cyber attacks. 50,000, 180% more than in 2014. And 134 of these attacks were directed against critical infrastructures. And in 2016, more than 100,000 are expected, 300 of them against also critical infrastructures. Common people should interiorize cybersecurity in the personal and professional activities. In this line, in a recent article on the Australian, Alain Dupont remarked that cybersecurity has to become an intuitive and fundamental skill for all Australians, and I should add for everybody. On the other hand, companies should not see cybersecurity as a cost, but an investment for the company, since safeguarding intellectual property, financial information, or the company's reputation is a crucial part of business strategy. And the same principles should apply at national level, when our national security may be at risk. This is the reason that lies behind the national security strategy elaborated by each country, the Australian one having just been released 2 weeks ago by Prime Minister Mr. Turnbull. It has been a pleasure for the Foundation to be able to organize this seminar with the Australian Strategic Policy Institute in this extraordinary venue. Thank you, Peter, and all of your team for your help and support. I hope that in the future we may find new opportunity to work together again. We are very proud of the excellent speaker and moderator, both Spanish and Australia, that we have managed to convene today in this seminar. Thank you for having accepted our invitation and for your contribution to this forum. Let me make a special reference to the valuable support of the Ambassador at large for cybersecurity of the Spanish Minister for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, Mr. Ricardo Moore, whose guidance has been essential for us. And I also would like to express my special gratitude to all the Spanish speakers who have traveled from Spain to participate in this meeting. I wish you all a rich and fruitful debate with the hope that this forum may allow experts from Spain and from Australia to know each other better, maybe like to explore new areas of future cooperation between our two countries, and make our society safer and more resilient to cyber attacks. Thank you very much.
Richard, if I can ask you to take the podium.
Well, thank you for those opening remarks. I'd like to start by thanking the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, the Spain-Australia Council Foundation, and the Embassy of Spain for organising this event and for providing me with the opportunity of making some opening remarks. I would also like to warmly welcome our Spanish visitors, and in particular those of you who have made the long journey from Spain to Canberra on behalf of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and of the Australian Government. A particular welcome to Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Ignacio Ybañez, the President of the Spain-Australia Council Foundation, José Manuel Revuelta, and His Excellency, the Ambassador of Spain, Manuel Cacho, whose hospitality many of us enjoyed last evening. I sincerely hope our visitors enjoy their time here, and as well as having some fruitful exchanges with colleagues at events such as this, have the opportunity to see something of this country. The relationship between Australia and Spain has deepened significantly in recent years. Spain is a valued defence partner, and our increased materiel and defence industry cooperation has strengthened our bilateral relationship. We share common views on a great number of global security issues, evidenced by our respective contributions in Afghanistan, through the Resolute Support Mission, and the international coalition in Iraq fighting Daesh. Of course, Spanish company Navantia, one of Europe's largest naval shipbuilders, and indeed the third largest naval vessel exporter in the world, has played a key role in the reshaping of contemporary Australia-Spain defence materiel cooperation. Navantia has contributed to the building of Australia's two landing helicopter docks, HMAS Canberra and HMAS Adelaide. These iconic vessels have transformed Australia's amphibious capabilities. Navantia is poised to make a contribution to Australia's defence material acquisitions for the foreseeable future. We welcome the selection of Navantia as the preferred tenderer for the construction of two replacement replenishment vessels, and indeed the shortlisting of Navantia for Australia's future frigate project. This current dialogue takes our cooperation into a new direction towards cyber threats as a national security challenge, protection of critical infrastructure, and fighting cybercrime. Both Australia and Spain, as has been mentioned, have national cybersecurity strategies. Spain released its strategy in 2013, together with its national security strategy. Of course, as mentioned, Australia released its own cybersecurity strategy last month. Both of us are keenly aware of the importance of partnerships with the private sector to make cybersecurity work. In the case of Spain, there is the added dimension of working in the framework of the European Union, and we'll be very interested to hear about that dimension of your work. Internationally, we're often in the same fora, working on the same or similar issues. We both have interests in the debate on norms of responsible behaviour of states in cyberspace and in the UN Cyber Group of governmental experts. We support the development of measures to reduce the risk of conflict from unexplained cyber incidents in our respective regions. Spain in the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Australia in the ASEAN Regional Forum. We are members of the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, the International Forum to Promote Cooperation of Cyber Capacity building set up at last year's Global Cyberspace Conference in The Hague, and we are members of the Freedom Online Coalition, committed to a free and open internet. And our cooperation in all of these areas has been close and effective. We also pursue cooperation with partners through bilateral dialogue and MOUs. This dialogue, of course, brings together distinguished representatives from the Australian and Spanish government, think tank and business communities to discuss the latest trends in cybersecurity and government and business approaches to cybersecurity in the context of cooperation between Spain and Australia. We hope to learn about how each country approaches the challenges posed by cyber, approaches to developing and implementing our respective national strategies, and any lessons that we've learned to date. Dialogue of this kind is important. And should we assess this event to have been successful, we could ask the Spain-Australia Council Foundation and ASPI to take it forward in Spain next year at this time. Of course, Australia is about to enter into an eventful period. When we emerge on the 3rd of July, we will want to roll up our sleeves and set to work on implementing the new government's policies. Our cybersecurity strategy contains a number of interesting proposals on the international side. Spain is somewhat ahead of us in a number of these areas, and we would welcome your insights to help us down this implementation path. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to a thought-provoking and productive dialogue. Thank you.
Richard, thank you very much. Now, Mr. Secretary, would you like to address us?
Mr. Peter Jennings, Executive Director of Australian Strategic Policy Institute, Mr. José Manuel Revuelta, President of the Council Foundation Spain, Australia, Mr. Richard Sadleir, First Assistant Secretary of the International Security Division of Austria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Manuel Cacho, DG Santa Corta, Ambassador Moore, Ambassador Dezcayar, Secretary General of the Council Foundation, expert, representative of private enterprise, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by expressing my satisfaction with the relevance of this seminar organized by the Spain-Australia Council Foundation in collaboration with the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. A good example of the possibilities the Council offers as a bridge between both of our societies and a vector for optimization of synergies. The Council Foundation aims at boosting bilateral initiatives from Spain and Australia and cooperates in promoting mutual understanding between both civil societies. Bilateral relations between our two countries have increased and deepened ever since Their Majesties King Juan Carlos and Queen Sofia visited Australia in 2009. A bilateral flow of high-level visits follows suit. Minister García Margallo was last in Canberra and Sydney in September 2014, and President Rajoy participated in November that year at the G20 summit in Brisbane. Our two countries share a community of values. Both are truly democratic states with vibrant, open societies. We also share a similar geostrategic situation, both at the periphery of our respective regions, which make us useful as bridges to third regions: Latin America and North Africa, in the case of Spain, Asia and the Pacific for Australia. Spanish companies have also carried out a remarkable job in Australia and achieved excellent reputation in such varied fields as infrastructure, renewable energy, and fashion inter alia. A high level of efficiency and cooperation has won our companies numerous public tenders. Most relevant is the contribution of Navantia to the Australian Royal Navy. Its remarkable performance has shown the way to other Spanish companies interested in investing in Australia. Many young, highly qualified professionals from Spain are showing interest in coming to work to Australia. The program Work and Holidays, signed in 2014, allows young people from both countries to combine knowledge of the other country with some work experience, as well as to improve language skills. Petitions from young Spaniards have overflowed the initial annual quota of 500 visas, and we are working with the Australian government to increase the number. We share concerns as much as we share values. Non-traditional threats to security are making the world more insecure and increasingly demand democratic governments to work together to curb them. Cybersecurity is a matter of concern and a key priority for Spain. Let me say a couple of words in this regard. We all agree that dependence on the wide-ranging benefits of information and communication technology has exposed the world to risks and threats that were unthinkable only a few years ago. States must take responsibility to equip themselves with the skills and resources needed to manage and to respond to cyber attacks. At the same time, striking a balance between security and freedom should contribute to international peace and security. This is an issue that is particularly shared by Australia and Spain in the framework of the Freedom Online Coalition. On the other hand, the transnational nature of the attacks makes cooperation essential. Appealing to states to facilitate information exchange is necessary. An institutional debate is also necessary to establish global standards, identify best practices, and create a regulatory system. Spain counts on a model in which the states assumes a regulating and coordinating role in close cooperation with the private sector, which is here represented too. Spain's national cybersecurity strategy has made it possible to act in a coordinated way, and its national plan includes specific measures to promote international cooperation, both globally and within the European Union. In this context, this seminar we initiate now on how Australia and Spain face cybersecurity challenges is an excellent opportunity to enhance our bilateral cyber dialogue with the participation of the public and private sectors. As you know, Australia and Spain have participated with national experts at the Nation Group of Government Experts in 2012-2013 and 2014-2015 working sessions. Spain sees the 2013 and 2015 reports as important achievements. Spain also welcomes the additional emphasis put in the 2015 UN GGE report on the issue of confidence building, and a concept that the OSCE participating states have been able to put into practice after agreeing to a set of initial measures to reduce the risk of conflict stemming from the use of information and communication technology in December 2013 and March 2016. In this respect, Australia and Spain have also shared views expressed within the working group in Vienna in their respective capacity as partner for cooperation and participating state. Last but not least, in the area of capacity building, I would like to mention our common commitments in the framework of the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, to which Canberra and Madrid have also scope for cooperation with third countries. In particular, I believe that our two countries can contribute the area of ICT-based critical infrastructure protection, an issue that will be part of the discussion at the second working session. Let me conclude expressing my gratitude to the Spain-Australia Council Foundation, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, as well as to Australia Ministry of Foreign Affairs, represented here today by Richard Sadleir. I wish you all a productive exchange of ideas and hope that the results will be all the more useful. There is no gainsaying the fact that the topic will increasingly figure in the international agenda and debate. I thank you very much for your attention.
Well, ladies ladies and gentlemen, with those introductory remarks out of the way, it's clearly time for coffee. I would just say one thing to the Secretary and to Richard, which is that, you know, the best value that we can offer you, I think, is practical ideas that have the potential to be turned into real policy outcomes. So if there is to be a second meeting, I'd say give us some work, ask us to do something that we can usefully provide a second time around. And we will make that effort ourselves over the course of today. I want practical, focused discussion. We're not here to do theoretical things which don't actually have policy impact. So that's my commitment to you, is to say we will try to come up with some good ideas for real policy implementation. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that really concludes.